Alright, everybody, welcome to another earth shattering edition of the My Colony podcast. As I record this, I've just published the 1.2.0 update, and if you've listened to the podcast for any amount of time, you know that I promised after I released 1.0 I was going to do like a community podcast where I got everybody into a chat room and we talked about My Colony. But the deal is the 1.0 update took so long to work on that I got it done literally the day before I left town for the holidays, and I didn't have time to do any podcast stuff at all. So I apologize for that. Maybe we can still do that in the coming days or weeks here. If anybody is interested in that, you can just let me know in the forum. So the last three updates, 1.0, 1.1, and 1.2, have all... let me go back. I changed quite a bit of the game in version 1.0. Is almost constituted a complete rewrite of the way the game deals with colonists and production and housing and medical and entertainment. And it was a huge amount of changes for one update. And as a result, everything did not go exactly as smoothly as I would have liked it to. And so both 1.1 and 1.2 were fixes or additions to that first update. So now we've had three updates in a row dedicated to this big engine change. I believe all the work is good and done now for the most part. I'm sure people are still going to find issues with it, which we'll deal with as time goes on. But the game is in pretty good shape right now. The new changes have increased game performance considerably, especially on larger colonies. It should make it run more smoothly on mobile devices, and it increases the general level of production throughout a colony. It makes entertainment buildings actually be utilized, the same with education and medical. And it, in my opinion, all around makes it a better, more smooth city building game. So that's all the good stuff. So if you haven't played the updates yet, one thing you're going to need to take into account is that the game absolutely now requires you to have medical, entertainment, and educational buildings for all of your residents. This is a little departure for before. You could build that stuff, but it wasn't absolutely necessary. Now it kind of is necessary. So you got to make sure the concerns of your citizens are well taken care of. There are new statistics in all the buildings to help you track this stuff, and it could be a big deal if you already had a huge colony laid out that did not have entertainment, health, and education provided for. But if you are starting a new colony, it should be fairly easy to build all this stuff into it. I don't expect too many problems. In fact, now that these updates have been out for a couple weeks, I am assuming most of the longtime players have most of the problems with their colonies ironed out. So that's good. In the last part of this update, which is version 1.2, I added the ability to manage the production of your individual buildings. For example, if you click on a building and go to the statistics, there are two new slider options that you're going to see. One of them lets you prioritize a building. So what that means is if you turn the priority up on a building, it will get workers before other buildings of a lower priority. That way, there's a lot of instances where you build something and you want the people to work there first. Maybe you need steel right away. Maybe you need your cloning vats to get up and running right away. You can now set those to a higher priority, and people will fill those jobs first. The other option lets you put a cap on the maximum amount of workers that will go into a building. So, I talked about the cloning vats earlier. I think it takes like 80 employees. You could lower that down to 10 employees. It'll still run, it just won't run as fast as it otherwise would, but it frees up those workers to go ahead and do other jobs. So that is what I've added in these last few updates. If you want to know more about it, you can head to the forum on apeapps.com. Everything's been discussed in pretty good detail. All the bugs have been discussed, so go check it out. I want to just talk about now what I'm going to add over the next couple updates. They are going to be dedicated to crime, which is going to be added, and mass transportation, which is something that has probably been the top request for this game since I first came out with it. And I don't know which one's going to come first, but they're both coming over the next few updates. So here's how crime is going to work. There's going to be, okay, so with the latest updates I've added, you can now statistically look at a section of your map and see what the land value is, and that's based on a lot of factors. And you can see what the educational level is of an area. And when you have an area of your map going forward where the land values are low and the people are not very educated, you're going to start getting crime. And crime is going to affect further the land value of an area. It is going to affect businesses. People aren't going to want to work there. It's going to affect entertainment places. People are not going to want to go there for entertainment. And it's going to affect tourism and your overall approval rating. So crime is going to be a big deal. There's going to be police stations added that you can build to take care of crime, and you're going to have jails and prisons to house all the criminals. And if you don't have those, then the criminals are going to walk free. So the crime update is going to be fairly large, but if your colony is laid out good already, then I don't even expect you to have that much crime. This is only really going to impact colonies that have really low land values and everything like that. And so now let's talk about the other one, mass transit. People have wanted mass transit for a long, long time. Maybe you're one of them. It's going to work. It's going to be pretty basic. You're going to build transport hubs and transport paths. So it's like train tracks and train stations. And the way it's going to work is all of the stations in your mass transit network have to be connected to each other. If one is not connected, then it's not going to count towards your mass transit system. And when colonists are looking for a doctor or a school or a job, the distance between those buildings to their house is going to be impacted also by their proximity to a mass transit station. So you could potentially have colonists living in one corner of the map and working on a complete different corner if they're able to take the mass transit system. So it should make it easier to lay out giant colonies. It's also going to work with regions, so if you connect a mass transit grid from one city to an adjacent city in a region, you'll be able to have colonists working in one city and living in the other city, which is also something that people have wanted for a long time. So that's what I have planned for the next two updates. I think that should be a lot of fun, and I think they're going to work out pretty good. I think that's really all I wanted to talk about in this episode of the podcast. I do want to apologize again for not doing that group My Colony podcast in the chat room. The timing really just didn't work out for it. It's okay. We can do it again in the future if you guys want to. One of the things that makes it hard to set up is a lot of the players are in Europe and I'm here in the United States, and a lot of times the timing doesn't work out. But that's okay. Where there's a will, there's a way, so we can always do that. I'm also thinking about launching a separate podcast in the coming weeks for all of Ape Apps, not just My Colony. Because I have a lot of other games and programs I'm working on that I wouldn't mind discussing and talking about, but I want to keep the My Colony podcast completely dedicated to My Colony. So I'm thinking about that. Either I'll do it or I won't. We'll find out what happens. So anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for listening. Head over to the My Colony forum and leave your suggestions and your bug reports and everything else. And until next time, thanks for playing the game and thanks for listening.